Welcome to the safe zone, survivors. The world out there may be tough, but we're still breathing. I'm so glad you found your way here for our first broadcast. If you could, please comment down below and let us know where you are surviving from. We'd love to know who is out there with us. If you enjoy our journey and want to support the channel as we grow, please consider liking the video, sharing it with your squad, and subscribing so you never miss a supply drop. Thank you so much for being here, and let's get into it. I still remember the smell of the lake air when we untied the lines from the marina. The sun was beaming, and the excitement on the boat was infectious. With 8 of us on board, grandparents, parents, siblings, and the kids, the houseboat was loud, chaotic, and perfect. We spent the first day just cruising out to the deepest part of the lake, far away from the noise of the city. That evening, we anchored in a quiet cove. We grilled burgers on the deck, played board games by the light of the cabin lamps, and went to sleep to the gentle rocking of the water. It felt like paradise. The second day was all about what we came to do: fish. We woke up before dawn, the mist sitting thick on the water. My dad and brother had their lines in the water before the coffee was even done brewing. By afternoon, the cooler was full. The kids were swimming off the back deck with life jackets on, splashing and laughing, while the rest of us cheered on whoever had a bend in their fishing rod. We were completely disconnected from the world, and honestly, we preferred it that way. We ate fresh fish for dinner, told old family stories, and watched a sunset that painted the whole sky in shades of purple and orange. By day 3, we had completely settled into the rhythm of the lake. We found a secluded island, dropped anchor, and spent the day exploring the shoreline and sunbathing on the top deck. I remember looking at everyone that afternoon, my mom reading a book, the kids building a makeshift fort in the cabin, the radio softly playing classic rock in the background. I took a deep breath and thought to myself, I wish this trip could last forever. I didn't know how cruel that wish would turn out to be. The change wasn't sudden. It started with the radio on the morning of the 4th day. The classic rock station we'd been listening to suddenly went static, replaced by an automated emergency broadcast. The voice was monotone, advising residents of the major cities, including the one we had just left, to remain indoors due to civil unrest and a rapidly spreading public health emergency. We didn't panic. We assumed it was a severe flu outbreak or a bad riot. We had plenty of food, water, and fuel on the houseboat. We decided the safest, smartest thing to do was just stay put on the water and wait it out. We were safe here. By the 5th day, the emergency broadcasts stopped entirely. The radio waves were nothing but static and eerie automated loops. That afternoon, we steered the houseboat toward a high vantage point near the northern edge of the lake, where we could see the distant skyline of the city. What we saw chilled us to the bone. Plumes of thick black smoke were rising from the cityscape. Even from miles away, if the wind blew just right, we could hear a faint, terrifying symphony of sirens, distant explosions, and echoes of screaming. The internet on our phones was completely dead, but right before the signal vanished entirely, a single video popped up on my sister's feed. It was shaky, filmed from a rooftop. It showed crowded city streets, but people weren't running from a fire, they were running from each other. We watched in absolute horror as figures sprinted with unnatural feral speed, tackling people to the ground and tearing into them. The virus didn't just make people sick, it turned them into monsters. The reality of the situation set in. The world we knew was gone. We decided to pull the houseboat as far into the center of the lake as possible. Water was our moat. The boat was our fortress. But the lake wasn't as isolated as we hoped. By the evening of the 6th day, we started seeing them on the shorelines. Stragglers. People who had fled the city only to turn into the infected. They stumbled along the beaches, groaning, their bodies twitching. When they caught sight of our boat, they didn't wave for help. They sprinted into the water, thrashing blindly, trying to reach us until the weight of the water dragged them under. We realized then that the virus was everywhere. There was no going back. We thought we were safe in the deep water, but we underestimated the desperation of the living and the relentless nature of the dead. On the seventh night, a thick fog rolled over the lake. Out of the darkness, a small drifting speedboat collided with the side of our houseboat with a loud thud. Before we could react, a group of desperate, infected survivors who had been trapped on that boat swarmed onto our deck. It was dark, chaotic, and terrifying. We fought back with everything we had: fishing gaffs, oars, and the lone hunting rifle we kept on board. We managed to push them back into the water and secure the boat, but the victory was hollow. In the chaos, the unthinkable happened. My father had been bitten. We all sat in the cabin, weeping, as the fever took hold of him within hours. He looked at us, his eyes cloudy but his mind still there for a brief moment. He made us promise to keep moving, to keep the kids safe, and to never lose faith. Before the virus could fully claim him, he did the bravest thing a father could do. He walked out to the edge of the boat and stepped into the dark water, sacrificing himself so we wouldn't have to make the choice. It's been a few weeks since that night. There are only 7 of us now. The world on the mainland is completely dark. From what we can gather from the occasional crackle of a distant military radio, there is still no cure. The virus has won the cities, and it's sweeping through the countryside. The world we spent our lives building is gone, replaced by a gray, silent wasteland. But as I stand here on the top deck of this fishing houseboat watching the sun rise over the water, I look down at my family. The kids are huddled together, sharing the last of the breakfast rations. My brother is checking the fishing lines. We are grieving, and our hearts are heavy with a sadness that will never truly leave us. Yet as long as this boat floats, as long as we have the open water, and as long as we have each other, we have a chance. The virus can take the world, but it hasn't taken us. We are alive, and in the dark new world, that is enough. We had optimized our survival routine. We only ran the engine at night, letting the houseboat drift during the day to conserve fuel. The kids had learned to fish silently, knowing that sound traveled far across the glassy water. We thought we had the lake figured out. We were wrong. It happened on a Tuesday, under a midday sun that offered none of the usual comfort. My brother, who was on the upper deck scanning the horizon with binoculars, called down to the cabin. His voice was a tight, panicked whisper. "We've got company. Big company." I scrambled up the ladder and took the binoculars. Coming out of a wide bay 3 miles north was a makeshift flotilla. It wasn't the infected. It was a pair of large pontoon boats and a motorized barge, all lashed together with thick ropes, moving slowly but deliberately. Strips of corrugated metal had been welded to the sides as crude armor. Through the lens, I didn't see zombies. I saw living people, armed people. They had spotted our massive double-decker houseboat, a floating luxury fortress compared to their patchwork raft, and they were heading straight for us. "They're gaining on us," my brother said, checking our fuel gauge. We couldn't outrun them forever. The barge had a heavy-duty outboard motor, and our houseboat was built for comfort, not speed. My mom came up to the deck, her eyes fierce. "Your father didn't give his life just for us to hand this boat over to pirates. We know this lake better than they do. Use it." That was when the strategy hit me. During day 3 of our trip, when things were peaceful, my dad had mapped out the lake's topography. I remembered a treacherous stretch called Shallow Creek, a submerged sandbar and rock reef that ran just 4 feet below the surface. Our houseboat had a shallow draft hull. If we trimmed the motor, we could just barely glide over it. But that heavy armored barge, it would draw far too much water. I took the wheel, my heart hammering against my ribs. I throttled the engine, intentionally steering us into the narrow channel towards Shallow Creek. Behind us, the scavengers fired a warning shot. A rifle crack echoed across the water, the bullet splashing 50 yards wide. The kids ducked into the inner cabin, huddled under mattresses. "Hold on," I shouted. The houseboat groaned as the hull scraped the very top of the sandbar. For a terrifying 2 seconds, we slowed down, the fiberglass grinding against the sand. But with a surge of the engine, we cleared it, breaking into the deep, open water on the other side. The scavengers weren't so lucky. Blinded by their pursuit, they roared straight into the trap. A loud, metallic crunch echoed across the lake. The heavy barge slammed into the submerged rocks, its momentum tearing the pontoon boats away from its sides. The barge tilted violently to the left, its motors screaming in protest before dying entirely. They were stuck, high and dry, miles from the shore. We didn't look back to see them curse or scramble. We just kept driving until the ghost fleet was nothing but a speck on the horizon. That evening, we anchored in the deepest, most isolated pocket of the lake. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a cold, sobering realization. The infected weren't the only threat anymore. The scarcity of the new world was turning the survivors into predators. But as I walked into the cabin, I saw my sister cleaning the hunting rifle, my brother studying the lake map for more tactical positions, and my mom holding the kids close. We hadn't just survived. We had fought back using our wits and the legacy of what my dad had taught us about these waters. As the sun dipped below the tree line, painting the lake in blood-orange hues, I realized something. We weren't just a family on a vacation gone wrong anymore. We were a crew, and we were going to survive. For 3 days after the showdown at Shallow Creek, a lake was a tomb. The silence was heavier now, charged with the knowledge that both the dead on the shores and the living on the water were hunting. We kept a 24-hour watch on the upper deck, rotating shifts in pairs. It was my turn at 2 a.m. The lake was a sheet of black glass, reflecting a sky thick with stars. The only sound was the low, rhythmic lapping of the water against our hull. Suddenly, a sharp pop crackle shattered the silence. I jumped, my hand instantly flying to the hunting rifle slung over my shoulder. It wasn't an engine or a gunshot. It was coming from the cabin. I hurried down the steps to find my brother huddled over the old Marine VHF radio, the one we thought was completely fried by a power surge a week ago. The dial was glowing a faint, sickly green. Through the heavy static, a voice was breaking through. It wasn't the monotone drone of an automated emergency broadcast, nor was it the chaotic shouting of military chatter. It was a woman's voice. She sounded exhausted, terrified, but intensely focused. "Oh, any vessel operating on Sector 4 of the reservoir. If anyone is receiving this, we are holding out at the hydroelectric dam on the southern channel. Repeat, the southern channel. We have secure high ground, fresh water, and a medical bay. But our perimeter wall is numb." The audio cut out into a harsh hiss of static. My brother frantically twisted the squelch knob, trying to reel the voice back in. "If you can hear us, we have a doctor. I repeat, we have Dr. Eris. We are processing a localized antiviral serum, but we need transport to move supplies before the facility is breached. Please, if you have a hull." The radio went dead. The green light on the dial flickered twice and died. By sunrise, the cabin was a war room. The transmission changed everything. A doctor, a potential serum, a secure facility. But it also meant leaving the safety of the open lake and heading into the narrow, choked waters of the southern channel, an area we had deliberately avoided because the high, forested cliffs on either side made us prime targets for an ambush. "It's a trap," my sister said flatly, cleaning a fishing gaff. "It's too specific. What if those pirates from the barge had a radio? And what if it's real?" my mom countered, looking toward the kids, who were quiet in the corner. "We can't live on fish and dwindling rations forever. If there's a doctor, if there's a chance to build something permanent." Ultimately, the choice was made for us. As we argued, my brother pointed out the front window. The water around our boat was changing color. A dark, oily sheen was spreading across the surface from the north, accompanied by the unmistakable, putrid smell of decay. Thousands of the infected had wandered into the northern rivers feeding the lake. The water itself was becoming toxic. We had to move. We throttled the houseboat forward, heading south. By noon, the wide, comforting expanse of the lake began to tighten. The shorelines crept closer and closer, transforming into steep, rocky cliffs lined with dense pine trees. The shadows of the trees fell across the upper deck, making the air feel instantly colder. "Keep your eyes on the tree line," I muttered to my brother as I gripped the steering wheel. Just as we rounded the first sharp bend of the channel, the engine suddenly choked. It sputtered, coughed a cloud of black smoke, and died completely. In the sudden, agonizing silence, we heard it. Not from the shores, but from directly above us. A heavy thud echoed on the fiberglass roof of the upper deck, followed by the sound of something heavy dragging itself across the ceiling toward the cabin hatch. Nobody breathed. The only sound was the rhythmic tick-tick-tick of the cooling dead engine and the terrifying scrape slide of whatever was on the roof directly above our heads. I looked at my brother. His knuckles were white around the stock of the hunting rifle. My sister slowly raised the heavy iron fishing gaff, her eyes locked on the wooden hatch door in the cabin ceiling. Beneath the kitchen table, my mom pulled the kids flat against the floor, her hands muffling their mouths. The weight shifted. It was moving toward the center hatch. Then a low, wet, rattling wheeze vibrated through the fiberglass. It wasn't the mindless, frenzied screech of the infected we'd seen on the shorelines. This sound was rhythmic, calculated. Suddenly, a massive, bloody hand slammed against the glass skylight next to the hatch. We all gasped. The fingers were mangled, the skin gray and sloughing off, but the grip was terrifyingly strong. It wasn't trying to break the glass, it was wiping away the algae and soot, peering down inside at us. Through the smeared glass, a face pressed down. One eye was clouded over with a milky film, but the other, a piercing yellow, locked directly onto mine. It opened its mouth, revealing blackened gums, and let out a deafening metallic shriek that echoed off the canyon walls. "They're coming down," my brother screamed, aiming the rifle at the ceiling. Before he could pull the trigger, the hatch door exploded inward in a shower of splinters. The creature dropped into the cabin, landing with a heavy, bone-crushing thud right between the kitchen table and the steering console. It was massive, wearing the tattered remnants of a park ranger's uniform, its body unnaturally bloated and twitching with feral energy. The cabin erupted into absolute chaos. The ranger thing lunged at my brother, its speed defying its bloated size. My brother fired, but the shot went wild in the panic, shattering the side window. The creature tackled him into the kitchen counter, sending pots and pans flying. "Get away from him," my sister yelled, swinging the fishing gaff with all her might. The sharp iron hook caught the creature in the shoulder, tearing through flesh, but it didn't even flinch. It swung a heavy arm backward, striking my sister across the face and sending her crashing into the dining booth. I scrambled across the floor, my hands desperately searching for the dropped hunting rifle. My fingers wrapped around the cold steel of the barrel just as a second shadow blocked out the sun from the shattered ceiling hatch. Another one was dropping down. I rolled onto my back, pointed the rifle upward, and pulled the trigger. The blast was blinding in the enclosed space. The second infected took the slug directly in the chest, its momentum carrying it backward off the boat and splashing heavily into the deep water of the channel. But inside, the ranger thing had its hands wrapped around my brother's throat. His face was turning purple. I didn't have time to chamber another round. I grabbed the heavy cast iron skillet from the floor and threw myself into the fray, slamming it into the side of the creature's skull with a sickening crack. The monster stumbled, its grip loosening. My mom seized the moment, sliding out from under the table and driving a long kitchen knife deep into the side of its neck. With a final, bubbling gasp, the creature collapsed onto the cabin floor, finally still. We stood there, panting, covered in sweat and black blood. the smell of gunpowder and decay filling the tight space. My brother was coughing violently, clutching his bruised neck. My sister was sitting up, blood dripping from her split lip, but she was holding her gaff tight. "Is everyone okay? Did anyone get bitten?" I barked, my eyes frantically scanning my family. "We're clean," my mom gasped, wiping her hands on her jeans, her eyes wide with adrenaline. "We're okay." But before we could even process the victory, the houseboat shuddered. Without the engine running, we had completely lost steerage. The current of the narrow southern channel was grabbing the bulky hull, spinning us slowly in a circle. Through the shattered side window, I saw the steep, rocky cliffs scraping against our side rails, tearing away our sun awnings with a screech of twisting metal. We were drifting blind, completely at the mercy of the river, moving deeper into the shadows of the canyon, and from high up on the cliffs above us, responsive to the gunshot that had shattered the silence, more shrieks began to echo down. The shrieks from the cliffs multiplied, bouncing off the stone walls like a chorus of nightmares. Shadows moved through the pines above, tracking our slow, spinning descent. The current was quickening now, pulling the dead weight of the houseboat faster into the narrowing gorge. "The engine," I yelled, throwing myself into the pilot's seat. "We need power, or we're gonna smash into the rocks." My brother, still coughing and rubbing his throat, dove through the floor hatch into the engine compartment. "The fuel line is choked with sludge from the lake," he yelled back over the rushing sound of the water. "Give me 2 minutes." "We don't have 2 minutes," my sister shouted from the deck. Through the broken front window, she pointed downriver. The channel opened up ahead, but the water disappeared over a jagged white lip. The roar of a spillway hit our ears, the overflow of the hydroelectric dam. We weren't just drifting. We were heading straight for the drop. "I've got it. Try it now," my brother screamed from below. I slammed the ignition. The starter clicked. "Come on," I begged, slamming my hand on the dash. Whir, chug, roar. The massive outboard motor sparked to life, coughing a cloud of black smoke. I grabbed the wheel, threw the throttle into hard reverse, and spun the wheel. The stern of the houseboat dug into the rushing river, fighting the current. The fiberglass hull groaned under the immense pressure, screaming as it dragged against a submerged boulder, but the sheer horsepower of my dad's prized possession held the line. We weren't going over. Slowly, agonizingly, we pushed forward, crawling against the rapids toward a concrete intake wall on the left bank, the safety zone of the dam. A heavy steel gate at the top of the concrete wall swung open. 2 figures in tactical gear, carrying rifles, rushed out onto the catwalk. They looked down at our battered double-decker house of cards, then back at the horde of infected gathering on the canyon rims above. "Throw the lines," a voice boomed through a megaphone. My sister didn't hesitate. She coiled our thickest mooring rope and hurled it upward. The guard caught it, looping it around a heavy iron cleat. With the engine pushing and the guards pulling, the massive houseboat swung into the calm, protected waters of the dam's intake bay. The heavy steel gate slammed shut behind us with an echoing thud, cutting off the roar of the river and the shrieks of the dead. We had made it. When we stepped off the boat onto the concrete deck, we were met by a small community. There were engineers, former park rangers, and families, maybe 60 people in total. They looked tired, their clothes worn, but their eyes were bright. A woman in a stained white lab coat stepped forward, holding a clipboard. "I'm Dr. Eris," she said, her voice matching the one from the radio. "You're the ones from the lake. We saw your silhouette hours ago." My mom stepped forward. "We heard your broadcast. You mentioned a serum. A cure?" Dr. Eris offered a sad, tight smile, shaking her head. "No, not a cure. The virus is too stable, too aggressive. There is no going back to the world we lost." My heart sank, the weight of my father's sacrifice pressing heavily into my chest. No cure. "But," Dr. Eris continued, her tone softening as she looked at the kids emerging from our cabin, "we have synthesized an antiviral booster. It won't cure the infected, but it stops the airborne transmission vectors in this valley. It keeps the living healthy. And look around you. She gestured to the massive concrete structure. High above, solar panels lined the ridges. Hydroelectric turbines hummed beneath our feet, providing steady, clean power. Greenhouses were being constructed on the flat roofs of the facility, bright green sprouts breaking through dark soil. We have power, we have fresh water, and now, thanks to your boat, Dr. Eris smiled, looking at our massive double-decker hull. We have a heavy-duty transport to fetch supplies from the lower towns. We can't fix the world, but we can build a new one right here. A week later, I stood on the upper deck of the houseboat. We were anchored in the secure bay of the dam, but the boat was different now. The broken windows were boarded up with reinforced plexiglass. A heavy metal grate protected the hatch, and a solar array was bolted to the roof. It was no longer just a vacation boat. It was a vessel of the new world. My brother was sitting on the bow, teaching one of the local kids how to tie a proper fishing knot. My sister was laughing with a group of survivors by the garden beds. My mom stood next to me, a cup of real coffee in her hands, watching the sun rise over the canyon walls. The world outside our valley was still dark. The mainland was still a silent gray wasteland, and the monsters still roamed the shores. The virus had won the old world, and it wasn't giving it back. But as I looked at my family, safe, healthy, and surrounded by people who were refusing to give up, I knew my dad's sacrifice hadn't been in vain. We didn't need a cure to find hope. We just needed a place to stand, a community to fight for, and the open water beneath us. We were alive, and as the morning sun painted the concrete walls of our new home in shades of gold, that was more than enough. Hope doesn't come from a guarantee that the world will go back to how it was. It comes from our ability to build something meaningful, safe, and loving, right in the middle of the wreckage. To everyone navigating their own dark waters, keep moving forward, lean on each other, and never lose faith. Stay safe out there, survivors. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and comment below with your favorite part of the journey. Let's keep this community growing.